The municipality of Bocaue in the province of Bulacan is known as the fireworks capital of the Philippines. Every year after Christmas and just before New Year, people from everywhere around the region flock to the ever-busy public market to buy explosives and fancy fireworks as anticipation for the coming yearly transition. On that fateful night of July 2, 1993, the townspeople of Bocaue experienced irony to this moniker in the most tragic way that would have their faith tested to both their tradition and religion. Bocaue is situated 27 kilometers northeast from the heart of Manila. Founded in 1582 and established in 1606, the town got its name from the tree Bocaue, or giant bamboo, found in abundance in the region during that time. It was granted independence from the old Maykawayan town and was later on subdivided into 19 barangays. Traversing its region is the Bocaue River, a sub-tributary river for the Angat Dam, known to be the primary water supplier for the country's metropolis. Though Bocaue would eventually be known for many tourist attractions, such as exotic food delicacies, fireworks, and finely woven barong Tagalog, one would never cite its name without associating it to the famous Pagoda Festival. Every first Sunday of July, townspeople would gather around the Bocaue River to celebrate the 9-day novena of the Pagoda Festival, locally known as the Pagoda sa Wawa, or the shrine in the mouth of the river, to honor the discovery of the miraculous Black Cross found floating on the river in 1850. Legend has it that an image of a floating Black Cross saved the life of a near-drowning woman who followed it until she was able to cling and safely reach the riverbank. A separate iteration of the story also tells of a local fisherman who found the wooden cross drifting, took it home, and eventually decided to share the miracle of its discovery. The locals then bestowed the name Mahal na Cruz sa Wawa, or Holy Cross of Wawa. From that point on, the town would commemorate the miracle yearly by parading a replica of the wooden cross atop a pagoda along the Bocaue River, its towering shrine replete with blooming flowers, while escorted by colorful boats on its sides. Townsfolk who participated in the festival would then be given the chance to ride the floating pagoda, being preceded by a mass before floating ashore, then festivities accompanied by dancing, singing, and eating. Participants of the festival include both local townsfolks and devotees from other regions alike. On the eve of July 2, 1993, the usual thousands of people along the Bocaue riverbank flocked to see the voyage of the pagoda. Locals have been exuberant enjoying the festivities, and the celebration was in full swing. It was around 7 p.m. The night was pitch black due to the current blackout, but the bright lights of the pagoda, which was powered off by a generator, surveyed the calm waters in eventful fashion. The anxious townsfolk were already eager to see the parade get by, being hindered by the recent tropical storm Egay that hit the country that time, causing intermittent power interruptions, as well as the river experiencing high tide for the past few nights of the parade. Hopeful passengers of the voyage found themselves jammed near the barge's entrance, each wanting to tag along the ride with their loved ones or friends. Soon after the officer gave the signal, people flocked one after the other, jamming the barge slightly up and down with each hurried step to ensure their spot inside. The sturdy bamboo barge is believed to hold a capacity of about 300 people, but it was rumored that there was a feast buffet offering several lechon, or roasted pigs, at the end of the parade, which prompted more people to join than usual. When it left shore for its voyage downstream, It was estimated that the pagoda was carrying about 400 to 600 people, with some other accounts of the stories estimating the number of people to be around 800 to 1,000. Despite the heavy toll, the pagoda seemed to carry on its downstream float for a while. The festivities continued on as the people were all smiles and waved goodbye to the people left ashore. At about 8:15 p.m., while traversing the dark and wobbling waters between Barangay Bunlo and Barangay Bambang, officials and devotees decided to spark the Quincas fireworks brought over the pagoda. This was done as a signal to the officials at the destination point that the pagoda is coming and docking preparation should now be underway, which was just 2 kilometers away from where it was. Perhaps due to all the commotion and excitement by the people which caused the wobbling and shaking of the pagoda, that upon firing one Quincas, or a mini skyrocket firework, misfired and stayed on the ground, causing people from one side of the barge to move to the other side in avoidance of the sudden danger. The shorted Quincas remained on the ground and flattened out, exploding shortly thereafter. It was but one minuscule detail to some, and was believed that it did not hit nor injure anyone, but it was more than enough to cause momentary panic for the hundreds of people in it. The sudden surge of weight imbalance proved to be fatal to the pagoda. As soon as hundreds of people rushed from one side to the other to avoid the Quincas, witnesses and survivors reported hearing cracking sounds, eventually realized to be the support platform breaking. The weight of hundreds of people compressing into one side caused fractures on the bottom of the barge, and it did not take long for it to completely break into parts. When the supporting platform started to break, the barge started tilting on one end, and this was when total chaos doomed the passengers. Fearing for their lives, passengers one after another started stampeding around. The tilt caused passengers to helplessly search for every piece of solid material they can hold on to. Cries of agony were in full display as people from the shorelines and nearby homes watched in fear as the barge slowly but surely disintegrated and submerged into the dark of the night. Officials were in a hurry to call support. Local fishermen immediately flanked their boats to the vicinity in hopes of rescuing anyone they could. One passenger panicked after the other. Some already jumped to the waters and swam to the shoreline. The chaos that ensued left women, children, and adults who cannot swim helpless and distressed, shouting "Oh God" at every possible word of mouth. As the barge started losing critical supporting parts, the shrine atop the pagoda began to break as well. Electrical lines powering the colorful lights and still running generator now pose another immediate threat to the lives of all still aboard: electrocution. And to top that, in a wide body of water. The electrical lines were in full operation when the shrine fell from the top, and with it dragged the electricity, causing several people to immediately die from electrocution. Sparks caused by the entangling electric wires were in full sight. When fishing boats arrived at the scene, they were hindered by the impending danger of electrocution from stray wires that were now laid out on the open water. Some of the men braved the danger, but some watched from a distance in fear of water electrocution. By the time some of the electric wires had fallen in the water, it had already electrocuted and killed some of the unlucky passengers it had fallen to. By early morning of July 3, 267 people were tallied to be the official cadaver count, with some other tallying it to be around 279. Reports indicated that some of the passengers killed were whole families, some lovers, some group of friends, and some of them off-town devotees. Groups of people who just wanted to enjoy the festivities that night aboard the pagoda. The gruesome sight of hundreds of dead people laid out on the shore was in full display. Local officials, fishermen who helped on the rescue, and townspeople who voluntarily rescued during the crisis were all in full hands, carrying one body after another. Other bodies have been carried off to a near basketball court, citing lack of space amidst the already filled shoreline, News reporters from local media had already arrived and mixed in the commotion as well, scrambling for every piece of information and interview, while broadcasted to every television channel, as millions more watched the horror nationwide. In the midst of chaos and panic aboard the pagoda, one man stood above and almost nearly defied the odds hurled against him. Then 13-year-old kid named Sahjid Bulig. Sahjid Bulig was born on January 24, 1980, catching first glimpse of light on a local community in Bocaue. According to her mother Erlinda Santos, the name Sahjid was derived from Sahjid Khan, a well-known Indian actor in the late 60s, who starred with local actress Nora Honor in the movie The Singing Filipina, sometime in the year 1971. Sahjid studied grade school at Mambang Elementary School. He was known to his friends as Tansi, the Tagalog word for the nylon thread on nets used by fishermen, and was a sterling lover of hopia, a local food delicacy. Even in his early years, sparks of his goodwill have been in display. He became a member of the Boy Scouts at his school and was already an established scout youngling at the time of the tragedy. A little-known side fact that even promulgated his heroism was that his surname Bulig means tulong or help in Hiligaynon dialect, another native language in the country. The following sequence is a detailed account of the events that transpired and eventually led to his death, as told by the son of one of the survivors that day. Sahjid and a fellow Boy Scout named Richard Celestino were aboard the pagoda that night, happily enjoying the festivities, navigating the platform with gleaming smiles written all over their young faces. When panic and confusion started to set in due to the breaking, they were one of the few who immediately jumped off the waters and swam ashore without hesitation. They were known agile swimmers and breezed through the waters without breaking a sweat. Despite being already safe on the riverbanks, Sahjid couldn't resist the agonizing cries of people calling out for someone to save their kin. It didn't take him too long to gut it out and jump back to the river along with his friend Richard, where they immediately tracked the waters for the people they had eyed to rescue. They managed to find children who didn't know how to swim and were frantically holding on for their life at the time, pulling one drowning child after the other to the shoreline. Richard told Sahjid to stop going back after they've rescued some, but Sahjid was determined to save every child he can. He went back and forth until he was able to save the 5th child. This act of bravery instilled a beam of confidence to other onlookers and rescuers, who after that bravely jumped the waters and rescued other drowning passengers as well. After what it seemed like eternity of back and forth in the waters, Sahjid went back to the riverbank to catch some needed air. He covered himself dry in a blanket in an effort to prevent further onset of hypothermia due to the cold waters of the river that night. As he was resting, he heard a woman crying and begging rescuers to save her 13-year-old daughter, which was visibly seen waving and crying for help from afar. The poor young lady was trapped inside one of the wood materials that had scattered and intertwined already. In fear of drowning due to piggybacking of people panicking as well as electrocution, most of the people who heard the woman begging decided to nod their heads and turn a blind eye. In weeping desperation, she then turned her eye on Sahjid, who was in the midst of shivering, and kneeled beside begging him to rescue her daughter in peril. Sahjid looked back at the woman and paused momentarily, looking at the sorrowful mother kneeling next to him. As soon as he regained his composure, he gushed in one deep breath, removed his blanket, and made a sign of the cross as he jumped back into the river in an attempt to rescue the woman's young daughter. By that time, there were already hundreds of dead bodies floating on the water, mingling with hundreds of pieces of wood. He swam ferociously while avoiding the bodies, as well as sharp protruding objects that were in the way. He finally got to the 13-year-old kid. He managed to remove the wood and was able to free her. As they were about to get away from the bulk of the now submerged vessel, a big chunk of wood that was supporting the pagoda fell from the barge and grazed his head, causing a fracture in his skull. He realized his life is now fleeting away from him, having blurry visions brought by the damage from his skull, as well as blood now rushing to his face. With his last few ounces of strength, they both took deep breaths, dived together, and swam below until they managed to reach the shore. Upon reaching land, Sahjid collapsed, and the young woman he saved ran to her mother crying. It was his last moments. Other bystanders and rescuers tried to rush his now unconscious body to the nearest hospital, but there were no attending doctors, as all were hands tied with the other victims that were brought beforehand. He was believed to be already dead as soon as he collapsed on shore. In October 1993, few months after the ill-fated voyage of the Pagoda, Sahjid Bulig received the Gold Medal of Honor from the Boy Scouts of the Philippines and Service Award from Ateneo de Manila University for his bravery and heroism in the midst of the crisis. In the same event, his friend Richard Celestino received the Silver Medal of Honor. In January 1997, then-President Fidel V. Ramos signed Executive Order 393, establishing the Sahjid Bulig Presidential Award for Heroism. The award cited, "It is fitting to establish an award for heroism in honor of Sahjid Bulig to give tribute to Filipinos who performed extreme acts of selflessness and sacrifice." In July 2002, due to the efforts of the members of the Kapatiran ng Birheng Presentasyon ng Malolos, a 10-foot statue of Sahjid Bulig carrying a child with his two arms was inaugurated, standing at the heart of the Bocaue riverbank. In doing so, the image of his heroism was forever etched into the hearts and minds of the people of Bocaue. In February 2007, a short story of his heroic act was included as a story in the first chapter in the book Ang Lahing Pilipino sa Nababagong Panahon, written by co-authors Lazel Palingo and L. Rosa Blaon. This paved the way for modern children to learn that even in their young years, they can be a hero in their own way. It enabled them a good role model to look upon as they grow and face their own version of the life ahead. Following the year of the tragedy, the local government of Bocaue decided to postpone the Pagoda Festival as a solemn remembrance to the victims of the tragedy. The festival would go on hiatus until the turn of the millennium, when some of the officials decided to revive the tradition, though not as exuberant as the people are used to. The revival of the yearly fluvial parade has become an event for the commemoration of those who lost their lives before. The shrine atop the pagoda hoisting the cross is now just 2 feet tall, half of what it was originally. The barge was also leveled down in size, just large enough to carry the pagoda itself and the few people who will steer the lonely vessel in its morning voyage. Smaller boats have carried on as guides, floating in quietness for the 5-hour journey down the Bocaue River. For almost 2 decades, mourning has become the driving force behind the yearly celebration, behind a facade of fireworks and joyous smiles, contemplating a hope for a boost of tourism in the region. In 2014, 21 years after the tragic events of the pagoda, the local government of Bocaue decided to rekindle the dying passion of the festival, brought upon by years and years of silence and mourning, not to mention the river itself dying due to decades of water pollution. It was a joint effort of local officials, businessmen, and devotees, all of which devoted a year's worth of effort into preparation and promotion, as well as cleaning back the waters to revive its beauty, to bring back the smiles lost from the tragedy. Everyone involved wanted to entice a sense of moving on, instead of endless clinging to the image of the submerging pagoda. Riding on the theme Balik Saya Tayo Na, Cruz Sawawa sa Pagoda, roughly translating to rejoice, let's go, cross and shrine on the river, the government brought back the original size of the pagoda shrine and also prepared to celebrate back the traditional 9-day novena, where the pagoda will traverse the river for 9 nights, following a mass and festivities. Safety and precaution was paramount this time. Protocols were far more strict and severe, a testament to a vow that the tragic memories of the past will never happen again. Back then, the pagoda was made entirely of wood and bamboo. In that year, the pagoda was a 48-foot structure mounted on 3 bangkas and built on the foundation of metal braces supporting the entire barge. The platform is still built on solid wood, but the supporting metal braces, including the frame of the shrine that will eventually hoist the mystical cross, made it solid and near impervious to breakage. Every barangay around Bocaue was given a protocol to follow should they be interested in riding the pagoda. Only 40 people from each barangay will be allowed to ride, and pre-registration is required beforehand. After registration, a return confirmation is needed from the officials, which will then be presented by the individual as a pass to ride the pagoda. Pregnant women and children below 10 years old are now forbidden to ride. Local officials also now strictly control the number of passengers, restricting the maximum number of allowed passengers to 250. All granted passengers are also required to wear a life vest before even boarding the barge. On top of that, the pagoda is now accompanied by several rubber boats from the Coast Guard, some directly accompanying the barge on its side from start to finish, while others constantly roam back and forth on the projected pathing of the voyage. Aside from the fluvial parade, the officials also prepared a number of events that the people of Bocaue can delve into. Among them was a special cultural night where participants were students from different schools around Bocaue, displaying a unique showcase of heritage of their municipality. Also included is a unity game between local priests and government staff, and the Ronda Bike Run, a motorcycle fun run circling the main roads of Bocaue to commemorate the lost lives of the tragedy. After the successful celebration of the Pagoda Festival that year, Bocaueños have enjoyed the yearly festival since. With protocols laid out for the safety of everyone, the joyous celebration slowly came back to life and has been that way. It has been more than 2 decades and the people have already come a long way from that grim haunting. If there is anything that this tragedy has taught us, it is the fact that we Filipinos are one nation of resilient individuals. People might be shaken in mind and spirit, but the fight lives on.